that same mountain for 40 years. The parable, the allegory, the principle. Jehovah's Witnesses, some of them been in 30, 40, 50 years, not ready to come out. But they coming out now. Don't get it wrong. Some of them are coming out after all that time. It's the same principle. Freeing them. Jehovah was freeing them. Jesus was freeing those people off that mountain. You've been here for 40 years. You don't get it yet? Come on, man. Let's go. I got stuff for y'all to do. You can't do it sitting here, okay? Y'all, the preparation you need to hear is over. It's time for you to move on. And that's what we're saying now. All that hiding, that's done. That's done. And you're no longer going to be able to get away with it. Jehovah and Jesus were freeing people. To do your part in helping free somebody from whatever their issue is, religion, drugs, sex, drinking, whatever it is, that is the highest form of love, self-love, and love for your fellow man. Because the only people that can reach somebody who's been drinking is a former drinker. Former gang member can only reach a former gang member. Former politician can only reach a former politician or a current politician. You get me? That's help. That's help. That's help. That's freeing. That's the legacy we're supposed to be passing on. Current Jehovah's Witnesses, helping people, not just in your square, in your sphere of influence. That's finite. There's 8 billion people on this joint. And probably half of them are trapped in religion. You can't call yourself a loving congregation, a loving institution, a loving individual, and then when it comes time to help somebody who's not a Jehovah's Witness, you don't do it. Do you know all of the people that gave me the best help, the best direction, the most consoling, not a single one of them were Jehovah's Witnesses. All of them were in Christendom, as you like to call it, doing what their Jesus taught them to do. Bring your fellow man in. When I used to go to church, the pastor, whenever there was somebody new, or like one time this dude had just got released from jail, and he called him up. He said, everybody come up in here and love up on this brother. Let him know he's going to be all right. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody in here, come up and love up on his brother. We didn't know him. I didn't know him. I never met him. All right, bro. Glad to see you. Everything going to be all right. How can we help? Christendom, showing that Jesus loved. You hear me? And let's not talk about, or forget to talk about, casting out demons. Casting out demons, right? Something else to free somebody. Get out of that man or that woman. And then they jumped into the swine, and the swine jumped off the roof or the hillside into the ocean. Again, the parable, the principle. Freeing somebody of a demon. Demon these days are different. They're different vices, different mechanisms. But he freed them. And we cannot forget about raising the dead. Can you imagine? Prep me first, though, Jesus. Before you raise anybody that I know that's dead, go ahead and prep me first, player. Let me get myself ready for that. But can you imagine how they felt to be able to see their loved ones again? Another outstanding, otherworld example of love and bringing people great joy and improving their outlook. Can you imagine the outlook of all these people he helped? The sick he healed, the people he raised from the dead, the people he fed, the humility he showed in washing his disciples' feet. You forgot about that, huh? Can you imagine what that did for people moving on when they move on to deal throughout their lives? And they're going to show that same love. Whatever you teach somebody, that's what they're going to do. And Jehovah's Witnesses, you teach conditional love. You teach shunning. And there's no more denying it. We're not even listening to you, right? For those of you who are listening right now, like, that's not all we teach. Let me tell you something. That is what we know to be true. The rest of what you teach is just as bad as the shunning. It's negativity. You're not freeing anybody. You're enslaving people with your doctrine. That's why your governing body has run from the United States, because we've all figured it out. And they went across the pond over to the poor countries who don't maybe have internet access that we have, so they don't know what y'all about. But that's not working either. Those African countries are saying, get out of here with that. The numbers are diminishing. I just saw something about that today. The African numbers are diminishing because they're starting to get it. For those of them that do have internet, I hope they're listening. Hope they're watching. Keep reading. Keep learning about this organization. That's what you guys do. You have to run When you're doing something you ain't got no business, you got to run. That's not love at all. So you don't provide any of that. So when you teach your children this poison, this virus, they're going to teach that to their children. Don't do this, don't do that. No school, no education, no career. Don't think about financial gain. It's wrong. Death will be here in a second. Jehovah's going to destroy everybody. Think about that message to a child every day. But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus touched, helped, healed in the most iconic of ways. And I have not seen any of that in your organization from the time I was conceived to 45 years of age. As a parable, Jesus is the man. But unfortunately, they have made Jesus a real human being. And I'm going to play a clip for you, and then I'm going to bring back the initial clip from the opening and compare the two. Here we go.
So, how am I supposed to believe in the truth, the validity of Jesus in the Bible when we have no writings from Jesus himself? There's decades, if not up to 100-year period, where we have no writings from anybody else about Jesus when there were lesser supposed gods performing miracles, which they did write down. And then when you finally get to an account of Jesus, the Gospels, you have conflicting stories. Just quick example, when they go to the tomb and they roll the stone off, one, there's an earthquake and angels appear. The other one, that doesn't happen. One, there's Mary there. The other one, she's not. So they're not like small discrepancies like Jesus wearing a red shirt or a blue shirt. We don't have any real evidence from Jesus during his lifetime. And then hundreds of years later, we're supposed to believe these conflicting reports. How am I supposed to reconcile that? Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's a shotgun of a lot of objections there. I don't want to necessarily discount any one of them by not being able to answer all of them. Obviously, with a time constraint, we have to make sure that we go to the more pungent ones you've actually mentioned. I think you're just factually wrong about the disparity between the times of the writings in Jesus' life. For example, when you look at actually the manuscript evidence, now we have what many scholars, one scholar in particular, probably one of the world's finest biblical manuscript scholars, says is an embarrassment of riches. In fact, most people, Gospel of John, good example, Gospel of John is the last gospel written. No one disputes that. Many thought it was written in the 200s AD, long after Jesus' death. And so there was all this presumption about how Gospel of John is theological, it's legendary embellishment, there's no possible way this could actually record the life of Jesus. Obviously, it's just someone's theological reflection after the church gets established. But then they find this little postage stamp sized fragment of the Gospel of John, chapter 18. In fact, the very verses Robbie quoted when he talks to Pilate and he says, whoever's on the side of truth listens to me, is on this little fragment. The fragment itself is dated between 90 AD and 125 or 150 AD. That's the fragment. And it's a copy of a copy of a copy. Now, of course, as you know, copies come after originals. That's kind of how it works. So if the fragment of the Gospel of John, the very last gospel written, is a copy of a copy of a copy, and that's written between 90 and 125 or maybe 150 AD, that means the originals are even earlier than John. Now, if John is the last gospel written, and Luke and Matthew are written prior to him, then that means that they are written prior to 90 AD or so.
A fragment, a postage-sized fragment. I don't know if you had a chance to hear when he first, after the question was asked. This is a public debate, by the way. After the question was first asked, the gentleman that you just heard, before he began to open his mouth, he let out a sigh, stumbled at first, and then began to preface his answer. Okay? This happens all the time whenever these questions are asked. This is why I said they should have just left Jesus as a parable as opposed to a real person. This gentleman, or the young kid that asked the question, he's asking the stuff we all want to know. And nowhere other than this postage-sized fragment, first of all, what can you get from that? You can carbon date it, but what are you getting from that that's going to tell you that this was Jesus or that Jesus existed? Because in addition to 1,000 other questions you can ask, The first question I always ask is this, and I remember when it was posed to me, and I will never forget it because it's something after 35 years I'd never thought about, 40 years I'd never thought about with regard to the characters in the Bible. So I'm not going to ask about Jesus because you're going to say, oh, he went to heaven, blah, blah, blah. But where are the bodies of the rest of these dudes? That is a sane and rational question for your main characters in the Bible, your Adam, your Eve, your Moses, your Noahs, your Jonah. Where are these people? Because we can go and, hell, you can Google map the pyramids. You can go and find documentaries and all these articles and links and pictures and videos of a person that we heard existed, King Tut, right? There's video of his mummified corpse, and there's videos of other mummified remains of other pharaohs that we've heard about during or before the time of Jesus. We have their bodies mummified in museums. And you mean to tell me there's evidence of this legendary Jesus and nobody has it in their museum? Hell, if I catch the world's largest catfish, right now I'm going in the Guinness Book of Records for a fish. And you're telling me we have no evidence in no museum of any of these bodies of any of these people? This is why they should have left it as a parable. I'm going to keep saying that. I put the links down in the description so you guys go see. I put it in there. We know this pharaoh existed because there are videos, and I put one down in the link for you. There are videos of people taking their vacations, going to the pyramids. Back then, when you can videotape and take pictures in there, you can't do it anymore. They don't, for this very reason. People are showing people where the Bible was plagiarized from in Africa, Egypt, or Kemet. They're showing right from the writings on the walls where your Noah's Ark was plagiarized from. All those things going on in the Bible, they were taken from right there. We have proof. And the other question I have is, why is it every time people like that young man who asked the question, the young man from the first audio clip, every time they ask this question, every time I present this stuff to you, I can put links in the bottom in the description to show you what I'm basing my thoughts off of. But every time we ask these Christians this, these pastors, these debaters, these theologians, nobody ever can pull out a pad, an article, a link, a fossil, something in somebody's museum and say, here it is right here. There's always this prefacing of information before they... Did you see how fast... Did you pay attention to how fast this dude was talking? And didn't show a lick of evidence. This is how they get away with it, but not anymore. Once I was listening to a debate with Christopher Hitchens. I'm sure many of you know who that is. Well-versed English dude. He passed away, I think, of cancer. Who was anti-religion and anti-Christianity. And he was well-versed, and he did his job. And one day, he was on the dais, and before the event started, the pastor got up and says, before we get started, I want to keep this subject focused on whatever the subject was and not on the Bible. And I thought, well, wait a minute, Pastor. The subject that you're talking about, you deliver it through the Bible. So wait a minute. What do you mean we can't talk about the Bible? I wish I would have been there. I would have stood up and said that. This is how they're getting away with it, y'all. They keep, again, moving around the coconut shells. Where are the bodies of these people? I talked to you about the pyramids in Egypt. You can go Google Earth that. The pyramids in Belize. You can go Google Earth that. We have all these remnants from all these other civilizations that we knew to exist. City of Pompeii, we have the ashes and all that, the remains. We have that stuff. But we still can't find Jesus and Moses and Noah and all these people. How come? How come this isn't alarming to you? Why do you fight with people that say, well, can you show me? A rational person is supposed to ask that. Current Jehovah's Witnesses, oh, you know what? I'm not even going to single y'all out. All Christians, talking to you. I just gave you, in the course of this 30 minutes that I've been talking, I've given you 2 clips. Both of the professionals talking are in the same field. Both theologians, both accomplished people. The guy that was just talking is also a lawyer by trade. both of them